Hello learners, I am Dr. V. Venkatramanan, Faculty, School of Interdisciplinary and Transdisciplinary Studies, Indira Gandhi National Open University. Today, we will be discussing the topic environmental degradation. The environment is all that surrounds us. It consists of both the biotic and abiotic component. Human beings are utilizing the services and products of the environment for their own good self. In the process, the nature and its components have been altered and their character has been changed. In view of this, the healthy survival of human beings and other living organisms has been very difficult on this planet. The environmental problems do not believe in the boundaries, transboundary problems, water pollution, air pollution, they are transboundary problems. And these environmental problems, in fact, it travels from one country to another when you talk about the transboundary problems. So there are also the local issues, local problems, environmental problems, and the regional problems and the global problems, which are demanding immediate action or attention. So in this regard, the topic environmental degradation is significant and it is much needed because the human population is increasing day by day, and it is projected that by the year 2050, the human population will cross or touch about 10 billion. It's a huge population. Whether the living system, the earth, has a potential to sustain this huge population. In that regard, the topic environmental degradation is significant. The environmental degradation is the deterioration in the quality of the environment. The environmental degradation is visible in the form of a depletion of natural resources, ecosystem destruction or ecosystem imbalances, habitat changes, habitat damage, and loss of valuable living organisms. I am talking about the extinction of species and also the environmental pollution. So the magnitude of change, the environmental change, and the severity of environmental degradation is unprecedented. The degree and the level of environmental degradation depend upon the rate, the resilience of the living organisms, ecosystem as well, and other related factors, because each and every factor is having an influence on the living organisms and also the environment. So there are a lot of work or network of factors. Their relations are very, very important to understand the resilience capacity of an ecosystem. However, the present situation reveals that the damage in certain environments, in some environments, is irreplaceable. So it's perhaps a very grave concern. So we have lost our pristine environment and will never be able to recover it. So that is the significance, that is the gravity of the problem. There are a number of causes of environmental degradation, and it can be either ways, but human beings are the most important factor or most important as far as the environmental degradation is concerned, because the degradation, anthropogenic induced degradation, can be controlled if our human actions have been curtailed or sustained in other words, because their actions should be the virtues of the sustainability. So in that way, the role of human beings are very, very important. Humans must recognize the degree to which they depend on the Earth's natural resources and what are the limits of the usage of the natural resources. So they should understand their limitations. They should understand the limitations, the capacity of the life-sustaining ecosystems. I am talking about the mega ecosystem. The Earth is, as such, is an ecosystem. So it is necessary to devise means, strategies for sustainable utilization of valuable, precious natural resources. So the environmental responsibility and stewardship constitute essentially an integral part of effective resource management practices. So in order to avoid more harm, negative impacts on the environment, researchers, the scientists across all the academic institutions, universities must consider the long-standing impact of any developmental activity on the environment. And also they must come out with strategies, suitable measures to minimize the future environmental degradation. So let us talk about the causes of environmental degradation. Yes, there are natural causes and also the man-made causes. When you talk about natural causes, these natural causes also can create instability in the environment, ecological imbalances it can create. For instance, events like natural events like earthquake, the volcanoes, the floods, droughts, wildfires, in fact landslides can cause a lot of harm or damage to the living organisms, human beings, their life, their property are endangered, and also it can change the natural landscape as well. So natural causes also are equally important. The alteration or the changes in the habitat makes the living organism, their survival is threatened. The survival of plants, for instance, animal communities has become very difficult if there is a habitat change, a landscape change. So that also has to be taken into account, and this is also possible. This is also a kind of a outcome of any natural events. Coming to the most important cause, there is the man-made cause, human beings. So the most, the topmost organism as far as the system is concerned, ecosystem is concerned. So the man-made cause, when you talk about every action of human beings is having an impact on the environment, whether it's a positive or negative, that is to be taken into account. But most often it is a negative impact. For instance, the activities like deforestation, the pollution problems, land use planning, improper land use planning and development, over exploitation of the natural resources, and intensive agricultural practices. Intensive means, if it is improper practices, farming practices, poor quality of water and air, wetlands, aquatic life, and waste generation. These are all the actions and the result of human actions. So these are all are causes for environmental degradation. If you look at the decade between 1960 and 2000, the world population has increased tremendously, and this is because of developments in the medical technology, the facilities, the basic necessities, basic amenities that have been provided to the human beings. Enormous growth was there because the technological development was very high. Population growth was also there, and that has had an impact on the birth rate and also the death rate. The death rate particularly declined during this particular period. Birth rate was increasing, and due to many reasons. So this mismatch, or in other words, there is a huge gap between the birth rate and death rate that has led to a population explosion. During this period, there's 3-4 decades in the last century, the environmental problems also grew, and the world's attention across the national governments, many of the United Nations body, all shifted towards the environment, concern for the environment, the problems to the environment, because the focus has shifted. The focus has been shifted along with the economic development, how best we can improve the environment, how best we can minimize the negative impacts of the development. That's the most tricky thing. So in fact, many of the landmark environmental events also took place in the period 1960 to 2000. In fact, the human beings have disturbed the ecology, natural ecology, the riverine ecology, the wetland ecology, whatnot. Every natural ecology has been disturbed by the human actions, human beings. And the natural processes were also disturbed in the name of what? Development, economic development. So let us look at the effects of the environmental degradation. The environmental degradation hinders with the renewable capacity of the natural resources, if it is a renewable natural resources, and also it checks the availability. So both the availability and also the renewable capacity has been affected because of the environmental degradation. So this environmental degradation also contributes to the decrease in the quality of air, water, land, and even the genetic diversity or genetic resources, whether it's the medicinal plants or the food crops. See, everything is influenced. It has been negatively affected because of environmental degradation. So let us discuss one by one the key effects of environmental degradation. The first effect is the atmospheric changes, atmospheric changes in terms of composition, in terms of pollutant species, the concentration of pollutant species. That is a key effect of environmental degradation. So the environmental degradation disturbs the natural biogeochemical cycles and other processes that is taking place in the nature. For instance, uncontrolled, reckless deforestation and mining activity can destroy the natural land cover and alter the atmospheric composition. That's the thing. We can understand very well that because how deforestation can pump in more of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, and that can lead to changes in the climate system, and definitely it will lead to climate change and global warming. And when you talk about these both aspects, definitely the point comes to your mind is the the changing dynamics in terms of the climate system and the symptoms of it. When I say symptoms, the the occurrence of extreme events, weather events. These all have been related with the human activity. For instance, the deforestation or land use changes. So along with this, the occurrence of extreme events, if you see, the intensity and the frequency of natural disasters also increases. See, the overall result is the shift in the precipitation pattern, the temperature, so all meteorological parameters. And that will have a deep impact on the environment. And of course, if you see it is having a deep impact on the environment, definitely it will have an impact on the all living organism possible. So the next important effect of environmental degradation is the environmental pollution. Environmental degradation is responsible for addition of a lot of toxic, harmful chemicals into the environment. In fact, rapid industrialization, urbanization, the developmental activity which is unplanned have done more harm to the environment. For instance, agricultural activity, I said if it is non-judicious, if it is intensive, it's not planned, it's unscientific, then agricultural activity can have a problem to the environment in terms of the contamination to the environment. I'm talking about the pesticide pollution or soil pollution, air pollution as well. So what is required to be noted here is that whatever the activity is there, we need to take into account that how scientific it is, how best we can minimize the negative impacts on the environment. So when I talked about the air as well, because air pollution is a very significant aspect, because when you talk about the environmental pollution, in fact the air we breathe, it's getting polluted day by day, and the water we drink, it's questionable. Because when I say it's questionable, because the water bodies are getting pumped with a lot of waste, because definitely it is because of the population growth, population explosion, and other industry related activities, urbanization activities also. So air and water pollution go in hand. Definitely we need to take into account all aspects, the environmental pollution aspects, when we are talking about environmental degradation. In fact, when you talk about the waste, one important thing comes to your mind, everyone's mind, is the solid waste or municipal solid waste, which includes the recent one, that is the electronic waste as well. So it can be categorically stated that environmental pollution is a cause of concern. It's a cause of great concern, and it is one of the most visible forms of environmental degradation. A third important effect of environmental degradation is the biodiversity loss, extinction of species, because we are in the mass extinction, era of sixth mass extinction. Yes, era of sixth mass extinction. So environmental degradation has led to the destruction of forests and also natural ecosystems. In fact, number of the threatened species, it is continuing to increase worldwide because of a lot of changes to the environment. It can be a global change, global environmental change, the climate change. There are many changes that is taken to the environment. So these all to be taken to account. For instance, the acidification of the water bodies, the deforestation activity, and in fact intended deliberate destruction of the natural habitat. So everything is leading to a problem of biodiversity loss. That is to be taken into account very seriously. The next important effect is on the human health, how environmental degradation can have an impact on the human health. Human health depends on the environment as well as the genetic factors also, genetic or behavioral factors also, but significantly it is also dependent on the environmental factors. So any change in the environment to the environment, so the negative changes, so that can also have an impact on the human health. For instance, urbanization, industrialization have changed the lifestyle of the people, whether they are living in the rural areas or urban areas. A lot of changes that has taken place in the lifestyle, the way we live, or everything, standard of living, everything has changed because of the urbanization and industrialization. Along with that urbanization, industrialization, the pollution problems, environmental pollution, whether it is air pollution, water pollution, soil pollution, or a municipal solid waste, or every kind of pollution, that has also increased, and this pollution is causing a lot of harm to the human health. It can be stated that the human beings are paying the cost of development in the form of deteriorating health and quality of life, because along with the economic development, this environmental degradation is also equally important, because then we need to take into account, we need to understand the balance between the economic development and environmental quality. So the degradation in water quality also like your air quality, it also is very significant. It's very important that need to be taken into account, because the water quality, if it is degraded, it can lead to a lot of waterborne diseases to the children or most vulnerable people, whether it's children or aged people or even the poor. They will be more vulnerable to this kind of ailments, waterborne diseases. Similarly, the toxic pollutants, toxic gases, the harmful chemicals that are released into the environment because of the industrial activity or the factories, that also can lead to deterioration in the air quality, and this can lead to what? A lot of ailments, respiratory ailments, cardiovascular ailments, and there are many are there because of this air pollution, deterioration air quality that can cause. So there are a lot of diseases that is coming up in the recent decades because of the environmental pollutions. There are many are there, so we can understand ourselves that in fact certain diseases are genetic, certain diseases are environmentally also induced. And another factor is the poverty. The poverty is basically it is a result of many factors, unemployment, lack of adequate food. In fact, they lack the access to the natural resources also. So in my opinion, poverty is linked to environmental degradation and vice versa. It's having a proper linkages. A poverty breeds pollution. That's what it was said in the 1970s. So as far as poverty is concerned, yes, the picture will be on the developing countries, because in the developing countries the poverty is linked to lack of natural resources and basic needs that are needed to survive, and that poverty can cause kind of spiraling effect on the environment that can lead to further environmental degradations. So environmental degradation indirectly also can lead to a lot of socioeconomic impacts that has to be taken into account. So to put it in a proper perspective, let us take the significant development that in the last two centuries as far as the environmental degradation is concerned, it is the climate change. So when you talk about climate change, it includes the climate. Basically, it is an average weather at any place. It includes the patterns of precipitation, temperature, all other meteorological parameters. These patterns are fundamental, in fact, to shape any kind of ecosystems. It's a natural ecosystem or even the man-made ecosystem. It is very, very essential. Climate is the most important thing. And also it can influence the human population in many, many ways. It will influence the economy also, human economies also it will be influencing. The development it can influence. So the climate change is in fact a significant cause to worry. The Earth's climate has changed throughout the history. Most of these changes in the climate are attributed to very small variations in the Earth's orbit that change the amount of solar output that we receive on Earth. However, the current warming trend is of significant, particularly highly significant. Why? A simple reason is that the present day change is because of human beings, human actions. That's the reason why it is called as anthropogenically induced climate change. So the rising global temperatures, are expected to raise the sea levels and change the precipitation pattern and other local conditions. So changing regional climate also could affect the forest, the agricultural activity, the crop yields and water supplies, water availability. So there are many impacts there because of the changing climate. It can also affect the human health, the animal health also, and many type of ecosystems. So if you look at the causes of climate change, there are both natural causes and human actions also. When you talk about the natural causes, then it includes the continental drift, the volcanic activity, ocean currents, the Earth's tilt, and other meteorological parameters. When you talk about the continental drift also had an impact on the climate because it changed the physical features of the land mass. The development of Atlantic Ocean, the position of the ocean, a lot of things we can know because of the continental drift that also have a significant effect on the climate. The separation of the land masses change the flow of ocean currents and wind pattern, so that will definitely consequently will be affecting the climate. So in fact we'll look at the continent, it's drifting even today. The second important natural cause is the volcano. We know when it erupts, it pumps a lot of pollutants like sulfur dioxide, water vapor, dust and ashes into the atmosphere. These pollutants, or in other words these it's pollutant, it will have an impact on the climate patterns for years. The next one is the Earth's tilt. Earth is tilted at an angle of 23.5 degree to the perpendicular plane of its orbital path. The changes in the Earth tilt angle can affect the severity of the seasons. More tilt means warmer summers and colder winters. The next point is the ocean currents. Ocean currents are known to change direction or even the speed, everything. Possibly it will change. Ocean currents. In fact, much of the heat that escapes from the oceans is in the form of water vapor, and we know that water vapor is the most significant greenhouse gas. As regards the human actions or excess use of fossil fuels, changing land use pattern, these are all the leading causes, man-made causes. In fact, since Industrial Revolution, if you see, the human activities have significantly altered the climate at any given place. It is because of the influence of the human activities on climate change, we use the term anthropogenic or human-induced climate change. The effects, as I said, the global warming, or climate change can have a deep impact on the, every possible ecosystem. And it will have an impact on the ocean ecosystem, particularly increasing the sea level rise, and that will have an impact on the coastal environment. So the effects are very clear, and because of the climate change. So it is predicted that warmer sea surface temperatures will result in more of even the phenomenon, the weather phenomenon like tropical storms, hurricanes, the cyclones, typhoons. This all will increase because of the climate change. In certain pockets. So some areas may go, may become, drought prone. Others will be, what you call, may face a heavy downpour. So there is a lot of changes that can be expected on the landscape. So to sum it up, we have discussed about the environmental degradation and causes of environmental degradation. We have also discussed the effects of environmental degradation like atmospheric changes, environmental pollution, and the decline in biodiversity, and also impact on human health. Thank you.